Why We Wait for Motivation, Part 4 of the Movement Series, from the Mechanics of Cognition by the Mercer Journal. Most people believe they know how action works. First comes motivation, then comes movement. You feel inspired, you feel ready, you finally get into the right mindset. Then you begin. It sounds reasonable. It's also the promise most of us make to ourselves. I'll do it tomorrow. I'm not just in the mood today. I need to get my head in the right place first. The promise usually feels sincere. What tomorrow brings? Tomorrow arrives. The task is still there, the feeling is still there, and somehow nothing has changed. The waiting continues. This creates a strange cycle. You wait because you assume movement requires motivation. Then the absence of movement becomes evidence that motivation still hasn't arrived. So you wait longer. The question is rarely examined, it's simply assumed. What if movement doesn't begin with motivation? What if motivation is often the thing that arrives after movement has already started? That possibility changes the entire picture. The problem of movement. In the previous articles, we looked at the point where action breaks. Not across the whole day, not across the whole project, a much smaller place. Then we looked at why some tasks never seem to begin at all. Often they lack shape. They remain vague enough that the system cannot clearly predict the next move. But this problem is different. Here, the task is clear. You know exactly what needs to be done. And still, nothing moves. Why? The logic trap. Because waiting feels logical. If something feels unpleasant today, perhaps tomorrow it will feel easier. Perhaps you'll have more energy, more confidence, more clarity, more motivation. The expectation is simple. Something inside you will change. Then movement will follow. But ordinary experience suggests something different. Think about exercise. Very few people enjoy the first moments. The shoes go on, the first steps feel awkward, the body complains. Then something changes. The workout becomes easier than starting the workout. Or think about writing. The blank page feels heavy. The cursor blinks. Nothing comes. Then a sentence appears, then another. Soon you're thinking about ideas instead of thinking about beginning. The task changed, or rather your relationship to the task changed. The updating process. Movement produced new information, and new information changed the system. This happens because the beginning of a task is full of uncertainty. How long will it take? Will it go well? Will I get stuck? Will it be worth the effort? Before movement, those questions remain unanswered. Prediction is weak. Feedback is absent. The system had very little evidence the beginning is a good idea. So it waits. Not because it is lazy, but because it is operating with incomplete information. Then movement begins and something important happens. You receive feedback, and the shape of the work starts to appear. Prediction improves, uncertainty shrinks. The next move becomes easier to see than the first one. Momentum begins to build. Only then does motivation often appear. It wasn't waiting somewhere inside you. It emerged as the system updated itself. This is why tiny actions work far better than they seem they should. Not because there is magic in small steps, but because small steps change the information available to the system. Open the document, put on the shoes, read one page, sort one invoice. The goal is not completion. The goal is updating. Movement tells the system, we know how this begins. And once the beginning exists, prediction improves. Different question, different answer. The strange thing is that people often interpret tomorrow differently from today. Today's friction feels real. Tomorrow's friction exists only in imagination. It seems smaller, more manageable, so the task gets postponed. Then tomorrow becomes today, and today's friction returns exactly where it was. Nothing changed except the calendar. The system is still waiting for evidence, and evidence usually arrives through movement. So perhaps the better question is not how do I become motivated? Perhaps the better question is what movement would allow the system to update? That's a different question, and it often produces a different answer. The first step does more than move the body. It changes what the system knows about what comes next. This is part 4 of the Movement series. Feel free to subscribe, and thanks for listening.